They were part of two very different Hollywood stories, one on screen, one in life. And at the start of a new year in California, both stories came to a sudden, heartbreaking pause. Victoria Jones, the daughter of Hollywood legend Tommy Lee Jones, was found unresponsive at a hotel in San Francisco in the early hours of New Year's Day, 2026. She was 34 years old. Her husband, actor Jonathan Firth, was found in a separate room at the same hotel, also unresponsive. The details of those final hours, as they have slowly emerged, describe a night that began like any other and ended in a way that no one close to them could have imagined. Victoria had built a life that was both connected to and separate from the world her father inhabited. As the daughter of an Oscar-winning actor, she grew up in a universe where cameras, premieres, and scripts were part of everyday reality. But she was not a constant fixture in the tabloids or the red carpets. Friends described her as someone who valued privacy, who moved through Los Angeles and San Francisco with the quiet confidence of a person who knew fame by proximity, but did not seek it for herself. Her marriage to Jonathan brought together two people who understood the pressures of performance and public attention, even though their home life was largely out of view. On the night of December 31, 2025, the Fairmont San Francisco was hosting a wave of guests ringing in the new year. The halls were filled with music, conversation, and the familiar sense of promise that comes with counting down to midnight. At some point during that night, Victoria ended up on the 14th floor of the hotel. It has not yet been publicly confirmed whether she was staying on that floor or had gone there for another reason. What is known is that other guests saw her lying on the floor and initially assumed she was simply resting or had overindulged at the celebrations. Those guests notified hotel staff, expecting perhaps that she would be helped to her room or offered water and a chance to recover. When staff arrived and realized she was unresponsive, the mood shifted immediately. They began attempts to revive her with CPR while emergency services were called. The San Francisco Fire Department received the call as a medical emergency around 2:52 a.m., and paramedics arrived shortly afterward. Despite their efforts, it was too late. Victoria was pronounced deceased at the scene. In the hours that followed, the hotel corridors, which had just recently echoed with New Year's laughter, became part of a quiet, careful investigation. The scene was turned over to the San Francisco Police Department and the medical examiner's office. Officers and investigators began doing the work that must be done in such situations, documenting the room, speaking to witnesses, and looking for anything that might suggest how the night had taken such a devastating turn. What they did not find is also part of the story. There was no sign of physical trauma. There was no evidence of harmful paraphernalia. There was nothing at the scene to suggest that Victoria had acted intentionally to end her own life. Early reports referred to no signs of foul play, a phrase that in this context simply means that there was no immediate indication that another person had done her harm. For those grieving her, that distinction matters, even though it does not lessen the loss. Jonathan, her husband, was discovered separately, and authorities have treated both deaths with the same level of care and caution. As of now, detailed medical findings about the exact causes of their passing have not been publicly released. In the absence of confirmed medical explanations, speculation has emerged in some corners of the internet. But those closest to the couple have asked for patience and privacy, trusting that the formal medical reports will eventually provide more clarity. What we do know is that, just hours earlier, they were part of a familiar ritual, welcoming a new year in one of the world's most recognizable cities. Friends and family expected to hear from them later that day, to see messages or photos, to receive the kinds of updates that accompany any holiday. Instead, they received calls that transformed the first morning of 2026 into a moment of shock and grief. For Tommy Lee Jones and his family, the loss of Victoria is not a headline. It is a private devastation. She is survived by her father, her mother, and her brother Austin. The family has not invited cameras into their mourning, choosing instead to process their grief away from the public eye. That choice reflects the way Victoria lived, close to a major figure in Hollywood, but not defined solely by him. The obituary for Victoria Jones will list her birth year, her parents' names, and the fact that she passed away in San Francisco at the age of 34. It may mention that she was found in the early hours of New Year's Day, that there were no immediate signs of external harm, and that medical officials are still working to understand exactly what happened. But the true obituary lives in the stories being told by those who knew her. Stories of her kindness, her sense of humor, her ability to move between the worlds of Hollywood and everyday life without losing herself. The same is true for the husband whose life ended alongside hers, linked in the public record and in the private grief of those who loved him. What their final moments share, beyond the specifics of floors and rooms and emergency calls, is a sense of suddenness. They did not set out to make history that night. They were simply living their lives, entering a new year together. Right now, the official investigation continues. Medical examiners will study the results of tests, review the timeline, and try to provide as complete an explanation as possible. Law enforcement has already stated that there were no signs pointing toward violent wrongdoing. The rest, the reasons, the small decisions, the unseen factors that may have contributed to that night, may never be fully clear to those on the outside. And so we are left with the images. A hotel hallway on New Year's, the view from the 14th floor, the quiet of a room after the music has faded. A daughter of Hollywood, a husband, and a family whose new year began with loss instead of celebration. Victoria Jones, born into a legendary Hollywood family, died in San Francisco on New Year's Day, 2026, at the age of 34. A life lived partly in the glow of her father's achievements and partly in the quieter corners she chose for herself. Rest in peace, Victoria Jones, and all those remembered alongside her. Thank you for watching.